Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and we're continuing the election season routine, and we have with us this evening candidate for City Council at Large, Keith Sonia. Welcome, Keith.
George, good to be back with you. Thanks for having me again.
So you're running for at-large, so I guess the obvious question is, how do you think the at-large position is different than one of the ward city councilors?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I've been fortunate to have some really great conversations with some ward councilors about this actual exchange and how we ought to be working together. I think tongue-in-cheek, folks have said to me like, oh, well, you're running for the easier job because folks tend to call their ward councilor first. Mm-hmm. What I've actually heard from some ward councilors is that that's how they like it. They like to be the eyes and ears on the ground in their direct neighborhoods. And that to me makes a lot of sense. And so the way I see it is that we can provide kind of floating coverage for the entire city and work directly with each ward councilor to make sure that, you know, if there are pressing issues or if there's a need for redundancy or if we hear something first, I think it's our responsibility to then work with that ward councilor to kind of come up with those solutions, because typically it is true that those folks will be the first
they're in the front line.
Exactly right. And so we want to make sure that we're not, you know, making their jobs any more difficult. We're going to work better and more efficiently if we're doing it together. And constituents are more likely to be sort of served better if we're able to work together in that sort of way. So I think providing that consistent coverage for the entire city and working together with ward councilors to provide services to constituents is pretty much how I see it.
Yeah. So you've been out and about. In fact, I got one of your brochures.
Thank you. Yes.
You and your wife standing on my front porch.
That's right.
Yeah. So I guess the thing that struck my mind is on your brochure, you're interested in building bridges across Beverly.
That's right.
That's fine. What do you think of the disconnects or the gaps that need to be bridged over?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Obviously, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek ourselves and a bit of a pun, of course. Yeah. But I do think there is a genuine need to kind of reconnect in certain ways and to reach communities in more creative, different ways that we've been doing as a city in how we communicate. Obviously, coming out of things like the teacher strike, these very like potent flashpoints where, you know, maybe feelings are still raw and that understandably so. Mm-hmm. You know, if we can get folks into a room, if we can, you know, think about how we're moving processes along as we're building budgets, as we're building strategic plans, you know, making sure that those flashpoint moments are kept at a minimum because we're talking all of the time. I think, you know, given my background in community engagement, you know, I'm well positioned to convene some of those conversations and make sure that voices on either side of an issue or folks from different parts of the community, as we know, Beverly is a collection of neighborhoods, and I think that's what makes it really special, but at the same time, like, making sure folks in Ryleside and the farms are finding ways to communicate to each other about, you know, common issues and moving together, moving forward together. So I think there's a lot of room to kind of convene those types of conversations. I'm most excited about that element of the role, is being someone who can help bring folks together, find new and interesting ways to communicate. And I think by doing so, we are indeed building those bridges.
Well, I think the city really is, well, it's 6 wards. Mm-hmm. They're all different.
Yep.
And try to think about what are the characteristics, what are the unique problems there. The obvious one is Ward 2 downtown, that, okay, they're the vibrant part of the city.
Right.
And they caught all the building on Rantoul Street.
Yep.
So that is an area that seems to be doing well. They seem to be talking about a walkable neighborhood.
Yep.
But it's a long walk to Stop and Shop.
It is. It very
and a
much
few
is,
other
yes.
things like that.
Yep.
So they've got a set of problems that I think are unique.
Yep.
And you start to think about Ryle Side that was a nice, quiet residential community until the bridge went out. And now they're sort of isolated,
Right.
and that gets to be another issue where you're trying to work with the state to get something to happen,
Yep.
and 5 years to get a temporary bridge in.
Yes.
I've been thrashing at that one for too long.
Almost hard to believe.
And
yes.
Curiously enough, my cousin's wife sent an email around to this morning. I was browsing through it, and it showed a situation where a section of road that went over, I guess, a large culvert or a bridge, just got washed out. It was gone. And there was this huge truck on the other side that couldn't get across. So this ex-Army vehicle comes up with one of these scissor bridges and comes,
Right.
opens it up, puts it right across, and they brought this, it was a rocket actually,
Yeah.
that they were bringing across.
Oh, okay. Essential. Definitely.
But the whole idea of having a military around that has, in my case, I'm used to the Bailey Bridge, which is a little more of an erector set kind of a game.
Sure. Yeah.
But these things can happen quickly, and I think really the issue comes down to one of how do you get somebody's attention to say, hey, we got a problem.
Yeah.
We need help.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's leveraging positions and understanding that, okay, yes, it's a state project, and so literally making something happen is challenging, but you have a bully pulpit. I think there are relationships that can continue to be leveraged. Obviously, the lieutenant governor of the state is someone who knows Beverly's issues very well, having been the mayor of the neighboring community for so long.
Yeah.
And so I think just making sure that, we're kind of pounding the table when it makes sense to do so. Not throwing a hissy fit every time, but I think in this case, it's warranted. And I think what that shows is dedication to constituents who, in the case of Ryle Side, certainly are facing real challenges every day in their commutes, which frustrates everybody, but also on their roads in the community. We've been knocking in Ryle Side on either side of Elliott Street recently, and we've heard directly from constituents who are concerned about a lot of their streets being used as cut-throughs, and they're like okay with the notion of that folks want to avoid the lights on Elliott Street. But folks are speeding, and they're driving unsafely because probably they're frustrated. But there are a lot of young kids who live in those neighborhoods, and we have to just be smart about how we're addressing these things and demonstrating to those communities that we support them. And so, if we're able to leverage relationships, if we're able to, as I say, kind of bang the drum when it's appropriate, then it's at least at a minimum, demonstrating to those constituents that we have their back. And I think they want to feel supported in that way. Again, residents, small businesses that are over there that have been kind of cut off from their usual traffic. I live downtown. I live on Broadway. And, getting up to some of those businesses, pizza place we like up there, it used to take 5 minutes, and now it's more like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And, I'm happy to do that, but a lot of people aren't. They'll be, okay, I want to get somewhere else and do it quickly. And that makes a real difference for a small business owner. It's great that Ryle Side has, rallied around each other, and I'm not surprised. It's a very tight-knit, community based on the feedback I've been getting and the relationships we've been able to build there. But at the same time, the city needs to do all it can to kind of show its support for an otherwise, disaffected community where they're as you say, kind of on an island.
It's a 12, 13-year problem.
It shouldn't
get
take
to
a generation.
The solution,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other issue comes up with that section of town is Folly Hill.
Yeah.
And that's been kicking around for 5-10 years now.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
It's a valuable resource for the city in terms of getting more tax revenue,
Totally. Yep.
develop the city, make room for people, and at the same time, there's only limited access to 128.
That's right.
And you talk about the issue of traffic. Well, that's another traffic generator
Yep.
in residential area, because if you can't get on 128 to go the direction you want to go,
Right.
it means you got to weave through the area to get to a street you can use to get to the right side of 128.
That's right.
So there again, it's another issue of the city would like to do something,
Right.
but it's an issue of coordinating with the state.
Yeah, it's exactly right. That's another example where the state and where the city would want the state, to help foot some of the bill to make sure that we're able to develop in that area. Because, like you say, it's maybe one of the last kind of bastions of low-hanging fruit where we could develop and generate some tax revenue for sure. But we'll need the state to step in and be a good partner there and get on a timetable that makes sense for the community. Two things about that. I know today, I think, or yesterday, the governor signed, $1.2 billion for roads and bridges. So, making sure that we are working with our legislative delegation, Representative Bowen and Senator Lovely, who, in my view, both do. I mean, Rep. Bowen is quite new to the gig, of course, but I think is already hitting the ground running. And so making sure we're maximizing those relationships and getting what we can out of Beacon Hill is super important, particularly when there's new monies like that available.
Yeah.
But then what also needs to come out of any process like that, I think, is robust community engagement. Like, how is anything we do in that neighborhood or any neighborhood in Beverly going to, change the day-to-day habits and patterns that folks are so used to?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the things that kind of frustrated some folks about some of the development on, say, Rantoul, is that, it was quick, first of all, in the grand scheme of things, and it changed a lot in a short amount of time. Then you couple it with the bridge going out, which obviously the mayor and his team could not predict, but it did happen. And so, could we have baked in some contingencies and things of that nature where, folks were used to being able to get somewhere in a certain amount of time, and now it's a much longer amount of time. And so anytime we're developing, we have to make sure that any project owner, developer, utility, whomever it might be, it's not just ticking a box with community engagement. It's like going above and beyond. I'm on the board of something called the International Association for Public Participation. It's a bit of a mouthful. Yes. It's Northeast Board, so that's IAP2. It's a little bit easier. And what we do is we get together, our team from New England all the way down to kind of the DC area, we get together and we think about, like, well, what are more innovative ways to make sure that we're achieving community buy-in when we have projects that come to town? Too often it's like, well, we had that meeting on Monday night and you weren't there. It's like, well, no, I have a family or I have a job that prevents me from being there. And I think BevCam, on the board of, does a fabulous job of helping folks kind of catch something they may have missed. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we are going into neighborhoods, we're meeting people where they are, and being enthusiastic about doing that and being creative about how we do that. And so that I think is the secret sauce of successful development, because then people kind of buy in, they understand why there's a shovel in the ground, how long it's going to be there, what are the costs and what are the benefits. And if they can wrap their arms around that, I think the conversation, how we move forward, will be that much easier.
Yeah. But a lot of things that Beverly would like to do, keep getting involved with coordinating with the state level. And another one is access to Dunham Road.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the Scanlon era, and they started talking about a bridge over 128
Right.
kind of thing. And I keep asking the obvious question of, why don't we just extend Dunham Road all the way out to Essex Street, and you got another access road.
Mm-hmm.
And all I keep hearing is, well, it's hard to do, and we can't do that, and the property
Yeah.
I think there's another area where something needs to be done, because that's another area of obvious development. Cummings Center or the Cummings Company is expanding in that area. The music theater got bought out, and it's been developed even more so, I think, than the previous episode. So there's an area that it's developable,
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's not happening.
Right.
And I think this gets to be an issue, especially when Beverly gets touted as the number one
The hottest, George. The
Yeah.
hottest.
place to buy a house in
That's
the
it.
whole damn country. You know?
Right.
Jeez.
Makes it hard for folks trying to get on the ladder. You know, there's pros and cons to designations like
Oh,
that
yeah.
for sure. But I see what you're saying, and I think, you know,
Well, that's going to draw a crowd.
for sure.
And where are you going to put them?
Right, and future development will do the same. And companies are going to be looking for a stable workforce and folks who are going to be able to remain rooted in the community. And so we've got to balance all of these things. And you know, I keep going back. I sound like a broken record, but I think a lot of this gets solved, or helps to get solved, by increased engagement. So in the case of Dunham Road, yeah, my understanding is there's a good chunk of that area that's, you know, privately owned, and we'd have to really kind of enter into conversations with folks in that area. There's obviously the cost to the city that would have to be weighed as well, but you know, we can have those conversations and let them begin. And then again, we're having conversations with folks on the ground in their neighborhoods, figuring out what makes sense for them, being explicit in how new development, you know, contributes to better roads and bridges, more investment for schools, et cetera, and making sure folks see the benefit of that. But I think in order to kind of do that, you have to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And not expect them to come sit and listen to a PowerPoint presentation and then be on board. It's like you've got to find sustainable ways and perpetual ways to kind of be reaching folks, and you've got to be out there doing that, not just at election time. You know, I get excited by knocking on your door and asking for your vote, but what I'm really excited about doing is knocking on your door next year and having conversations, hopefully as your city councilor, as these projects are kind of coming up and getting off the ground, to kind of get your perspective on that, and you know, make sure that those perspectives are baked into whatever plan we're pursuing. And I think if we do that, then folks will feel like living in the hottest zip code in America will be a plus, and it will be hot and a place that people want to live, which is a great thing. But will also be a city that's effectively communicating with its residents.
Well, I know there's a lot of focus of what I've been talking about on tax revenue, because that's what it comes down to at the city level. And had a couple of discussions with some of the existing city councilors, and the 2026 budget got passed.
Mm-hmm.
It's tight, and we've got some problems that we've had to adjust to.
Yep.
2027 is going to be a challenge.
Sure.
And already there is talk of an override. The president of the city council and Ward 5 city councilor already have been talking about getting a committee together to talk about it. And from what I hear, can't possibly get it on the ballot
Correct.
for November this year.
Right.
So it's going to be an exercise that you're going to have to take on almost immediately,
Yes.
and it's going to have to get resolved almost immediately. So how is this going to happen? You know?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary of where things stand, and I've kind of said to some existing counselors when I've been out with them at events or whatever, if we're all in the same place, like, wow, I'm applying for this job at quite the time. Right? I'm walking into something of a buzzsaw and a challenging situation, but I think my background lends itself to the conversations we're going to need to have as a community. And so you're right, Councilor Flowers and Councilor Feldman have kind of initiated this process, and I think that's appropriate.
Oh yeah, you got to get something started.
For sure, and I think, you know, making sure that, you know, we're having a conversation as a community, because let's say, again, going back to the teacher strike, we left that situation not necessarily, you know, tying a bow on everything and feeling like, okay, we've landed in a good place here. We still want to invest significantly in education and prevent additional layoffs. Well, in order to do that, we have to have a conversation about it as a community. What do we want to invest in as a community? Mm-hmm. And so I think, you know, having a mechanism to do that, which is what Councilor Flowers and Feldman are pitching, I think is appropriate. We have to make sure that whatever comes out of that is, informed by the conversations we're having as neighbors, that my role, along with my colleagues, hypothetically, as counselors, would be to help facilitate those conversations and make sure that it's informing, how we see things moving forward. Obviously, they would then have a final say at the ballot box, but, I think it's much more likely to be a productive process if we are really thinking strategically and creatively about how we're reaching folks. And so if you are a BTA, let's say, I would be excited to work with those folks to make sure that, they're going out into the community to talk about educational investment. If you're someone who cares very much about roads and bridges and sidewalks, as we do, my wife and I think are the only two people in the city outside of the bike and pedestrian folks who have been on every walk audit so far. We enjoy going on those. We just were with Councilor Feldman a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, I understand the investment that folks want to make in certainly our safety on the roads and sidewalks, but just bringing our sidewalks and roads up to snuff. So how does that investment happen? We have to have those conversations and how these things all kind of influence economic development more broadly speaking. Do we invest now in education, for example, to then generate the economic development that allows us to be self-sustaining over time? We see a lot of statistics and evidence that show that if communities are investing in education and in public schools, companies and businesses that are looking to relocate or set up shop somewhere are more likely to do so in communities where, the answer to the question, how are the schools, is excellent.
Yeah.
And so we've got to think about how we invest. But in order to do all of these things, it begins with having meaningful conversations with folks. And
I think that's an
good.
important ingredient that the situation after the COVID, some of the reports on where the students are, not too spectacular.
Right.
And I think one of the issue comes down to if we get an override and we just keep doing the same thing over again, we're back to Einstein's theory. That's the
Definition of crazy,
yeah. They keep doing the same thing over and again, accepting something different.
Right. And
I think that's going to be one of your major challenges.
I think that's
as
right.
I see it, is to understand if we get an override, where's the money going? How's it going to be better?
And what are the long-term trajectories of the money we invest now?
Yeah.
I think that's right. Yep.
So, lo and behold, it's your turn.
Oh, wow.
And there's your audience.
Thank you, George. It's really great to be with you again. I'm really grateful for the invitation to come back, my second visit, and it was just as fun as the first, so thank you so much. And it's great to be with you folks here in Beverly. First off, I want to thank you for supporting BevCam. I am a proud board member of BevCam. I think you've heard me talk a lot today about community engagement and finding creative ways to reach folks. BevCam is for sure a tool that is going to help us to do that. If you haven't, little plug for these folks, if you haven't been to the downtown location and had the opportunity to check out what's there, a state-of-the-art podcast studio, for example, you should do so. If you have an idea for a TV show like George's, this studio here at the high school is fully equipped, and we're going to leverage it if I'm fortunate enough to be elected as one of your city councilors, to make sure we're communicating with you. And so thank you to BevCam for always being kind of on the front lines of that. You've heard a lot about how I'm very interested in community engagement, how I'm very interested in reaching you, Beverly residents and business owners and students and teachers. And that's because that's my background. I've been in this since I was 15 in some shape or form, being on the front lines of community engagement, community organizing. Started off on campaigns, ended up earning my PhD and then coming back and getting back on campaigns and being on the front lines with big projects, billion-dollar projects, and when they come into town, making sure that you're able to kind of buy in. That's my experience, and so when I'm talking to you folks on the doors, and we've knocked now about 1,100 doors, and we've got about 6,000 or 7,000 to go, to make sure that we're doing all we want to be able to do on this campaign, and we aim to do it. when we're having those conversations, what we're hearing is that you are interested in learning more about what's going on in your own community. You're experiencing the day-to-day of living in the hottest zip code in America. That means a lot of development. That means the odd construction vehicle being on your street. What I think needs to happen is more robust engagement for when that is happening. If, like I said to George, a shovel is going into the ground, you deserve to know why it's there, how long it's going to be there, what the costs are, and what the benefits are, and what the ultimate trajectory of those projects are going to be for the city. So that's what we aim to bring to the City Council, that real enthusiasm for meeting you where you are, meeting you in the community, farmers markets and community events and things like that, being present. So when you have those fortuitous thoughts, you're like, oh, good, Keith, you're here. What's this deal? What's the deal with this thing on my street? I think the more we can place ourselves in places that you are, the more you're going to feel connected to your local government. And I think it takes a certain energy, takes fresh perspective, fresh eyes. I'm proud to be a first-time candidate to kind of bring that into the mix. And so I look forward to working with folks who are in government, look forward to working with new colleagues, and look forward to serving you the best I can. So I would be grateful for one of your 3 votes for Councilor at Large. Hypothetically, one of the easiest, ask George. Just need one of your 3 on November 4th. Visit our website, keithsonia.com, to learn a bit more. My phone number is everywhere, and it's not a gimmick. Use it. Give me a call. I'd really love to connect with you before Election Day. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, George. Pleasure to be with you again.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. And as I usually mentioned, if you've got a comment, my email address appears before and after in the credits. It's just simply my last name at comcast.net. And if you've got a longer statement, there's always room for you here at the table. Thanks again for joining us, and see you next time.